discussion about your family history or your history with Chinese grocers. Her family owned Allen's Market. Secondly, Mary Lo Wong, okay, she was also born in the United States in
1924.
In Tucson. In Tucson in 1924, the heyday of the Chinese community. And so she also has an older experience, I guess you could say, of this phenomenon. And Tony Lee also has a contemporary experience with that of Mary Wong. But a little bit different because Tony was born in China, but his parents made a pretty good living as grocers in the barrios in Tucson. So each of them, I think, represent a pretty good sample of the experiences of Chinese families and their children. And you can see again the family right next to the store. And Patsy was telling me yesterday that she's going to take on the title of a self-described troublemaker. And you can sort of see that here, you know. I mean, just where do you go? And I believe this is not your dad.
Oh, my dad's younger brother.
Their dad's younger brother. And this is Patsy's dad and her mother. And again, family labor and family labor again, even if it was the brother of the owner, was unpaid. Maybe a meal, maybe a beer or a 7-Up.
I have my older brother David. He's a pharmacist, so is an accountant, works for Silver Jewelers. My younger brother Alan Jr. lives in Sacramento and works for a phone company. But the four of us, you know, Grace asked me, did you guys have a choice working in the store? Hell yeah, we did. 2 choices. Work in the store or work in the store. Okay, that was great. And you know, I came with Grace because I'm the 3rd child. I was a troublemaker. I was the one that always asked me the questions. But I was always the lucky one that got to go with my dad to AG or Alfred and Lewis and get the supplies. Or I'll go to Jeremy Home Market and get all the empty boxes, you know, because we used to deliver groceries in empty boxes. So I'm the tomboy. I'm my dad's son and daughter all combined. You know, David and Selma were the A students, the good child. They obey their parents, not me. So I got to go with Dad everywhere. I got to go hunting with Dad. So, you know, I was the lucky child plus the troublemaker. But growing up at the grocery store, you know, we kid about not working, but we all had to work in the grocery store because that was our parents' living, and they wanted to send us to college and have a better life. So we understood that. And probably my favorite thing is, you know, everybody says, yeah, we sell alcohol when we're 8 years old. The neighbors coming in, hey, all day, you know, quart of beer, 75 cents, and we were selling beer at 8 years old, standing on the counter. You know, we sold cigarettes. So, right, Mary, we didn't know any difference, and we were always working in the store. If we weren't working in the store, we always did house chores or yard work. So, you know, we were given a choice. Go cut the weeds or go stack the beer. But everybody in our neighborhood was my parents' friends and were my friends, the kids. And the big thing is that what we talked about is why were we in the barrio? Probably for a couple of reasons. Economic reasons and probably prejudice, where we couldn't go to a white neighborhood. So we ended up in the barrios owning grocery stores. And the biggest thing is we gave them credit. You know, they'd come in and my friends would come in and sign, Jose, he could barely write, you know, we were 6 years old, but he walked home with $10 worth of groceries and signed his name, and his dad or mom would come in on Friday, and most of my neighbors worked at the mines. They were all miners. So they made pretty good money, and they got credit all weekend. They came in and paid, and it just went just like that. What the kids wanted to buy, it was grocery stores that fit the neighborhood. And probably everybody's favorite thing was Salitos, right? And mom figured out kids like them sweet, so she started putting the old apples and the old oranges. Because we grew up with just lemons, and mom just kind of figured out, hey, these kids like the sweet stuff. So all the old fruits, she started putting apples and oranges with the Salitos, so we kind of made sweet Salitos, and kids loved that. But you know, we tend to sell a lot of Hispanic stuff, you know, the chilies and the stuff that make tamales and tacos. So, you know, because of the neighborhood is regular groceries plus a lot of Mexican food items, you know, little beans where they made their own refried beans. But, yeah.
She actually, and her family was put under duress due to the death of her father. They managed to keep their grocery store and train her mother to actually operate it. And she started this endeavor as well as her older brothers, Loy and John. And she started it when she was 13. And she had 3 younger siblings in addition to this family labor. So here's a situation where on Anita Street, this store, Suki Grocery, was surrounded by other Chinese stores in the same barrio on Anita Street. They were the only store that didn't sell meat because the mother, who again operated the store thereafter, couldn't lift the meat. And they didn't have, I guess, a machine to process the meat. But they, like Patsy's store, they sold to Mexican people. They were competitors with, I believe, 5 others or 6 other Chinese grocers on Anita Street who sold to the same barrio.
I'm Mary Lo Wong. I was born here in Tucson, and I moved to the Suki Grocery store when I was 1 year old. And my father died in 1937, and my mother had 6 children. So, and she didn't speak a word of Spanish or English. So when my father died, my brother John and I grew up fast. We started to teach her how to run a grocery store. And my mother was very enterprising. She was a widow and ran this little Chinese grocery store from 1937 to 1980. I'm sure she was the only Chinese lady that had a grocery store in those days. We sold dry goods all the time. Oh, I'm sorry. And we grew up in the grocery store. I learned how to work there, and I worked in many other Chinese grocery stores. I worked at Woolley Market on South 12th Avenue. Then I worked at a store called Euclid Market, who is just, the building is still standing on Euclid and University. And I worked at the U of A Market, and I worked at my brother's store, which was the OK Market, while he was in the service. So I've had lots of experience working in a grocery store.
And whereas Patsy's parents really wanted Patsy to go to college, and she did, to get her away from the grocery store, Mary's situation was much more closely linked to the grocery store through her immediate family and her brother's family. Okay, and that's her legacy. And she speaks much better Spanish than I do.
Tell everybody I'm half Mexican.
Chicana at heart, yes. Okay. And Tony, unlike Mary and Patsy, was born in China.
First of all, I have 5 generations in Tucson. It's from 1888. Most here must be most people not quite understand the old Chinese grocery history in Tucson. And by then, you understand that Tucson, the city is so small that on my street, that is the south of 14th Street, the north of 14th Street, and then it's the city border for the community center. But south of that, on the Maya Street, just only 1 or 2 blocks. I think it's 20 grocery, Chinese grocery. So door by door, the grocery store, maybe just about 20 by 50 feet or something. So, but the customer, most is from the south of the city. So by then, my grandfather, he think he's smart. So he bought some land and built a store on South 9th Street and West 26th. And he built the store he called Bigger One. And what I mean bigger one is the 1/3 is for the store. 2/3 is for the storage, for the hay. By then he sell the hay for the horse, all those things. And then it's because we have 5 generations. Start with my grandfather and his brother, and both work together, and then on the property under both the name. And later on, and then it's my grandfather and my uncle, they work together on the new store, and they are friends. And later on, it's more grocery store built next to it. So he bought quite a bit land on South Tucson. Even now, it's a 60, 70 years later, those lands still empty. Because he afraid somebody going to build another store.
Just buy them out. Give them away.
Because of my grandfather and my uncle worked together there, and then in 1937, my grandfather went back to China, and the store gave to my uncle Li Hao. But the property is still under the grandfather and the brother. And later on they separate the properties, and then it belong to the other grandfather or grandfather's brother. And then so the other one gave to my father to work on the store. So he changed the store name from Li Hao to Li Fao. And that is the 1943. And then we came here on 1947. By then, my father, he was in New York for the only Chinese school. He was the principal over there. So he came over here. He don't know how to run the grocery at all. So the business, I tell you, I don't know you believe it or not. One day the business, that's about $30 to $50 business, not make the money. So by then we came over here, how we can make the living, and then we're already married. We engaged in Hong Kong and then married in Tucson. So later on, by the time it's what called Korean War, and then I tried to get a job from the what called the aircraft company, but no experience. So I went to the school in Tucson High, the night school. It's called air mechanic. A lot of boys, they know the cylinder or what. I don't know what is cylinder. So later on, so I quit. I moved to South 6. One of the school is the aircraft, the sheet metal. By then, I'm one of the top, the handmade those things. But later on, one of the salesmen, told me, and then one of the store for sale. And then that's why later on we bought one. It's called Trailer Park Market on the Ventura Street, near the Miracle Mine Stone there. And then for the 16 years. And then later on we went into the real estate. Yeah. So the last 2 years I've been retired. Business. So I cannot learn anything. So when we saw the store on north side, tried to operate it, my father doesn't have money because no money. So he said, I don't have experience. And then later on talked to one of the cousins, Jerry Lee. And by then, he is called Big Shot in Tucson. You got the Jerry Lee supermarket or something. So he know the bank. So he have because the bank don't know my father at all. So Jerry Lee have the both side. My father get the $3,000 for me to buy the store. But my father said, I just figured the $3,000 I'm going to throw that away because don't expect we can run the store. Actually, we don't know anything. Okay, but we think, and that is on that situation we should, go to learn it and because we already got our own families. Either the children is growing or something. So that's why we bought the store on north side. By then, most of the store is on south side of town. So some relative told us, you're going to have the trouble because you go to north side, most of the white American people there, they are more fussy. They need the store clean. They need the meat fresh. So you cannot do that. But we like to challenge it. See? So we go over there. And good thing, we bought the store from Mr. and Mrs. LaFay. And they are so good to us because we don't know anything. They teach us, how to cut meat, how to order, and how to take care of the customer and all that. So we know it because nothing to do. We have to build up our business. So we learn it. We never think about any other thing because day and night, 7 days a week, everything, we just keep working. So later on, finally, we know how to cut meat, we know how to cut, and then we remodel our store 2 times, and then we turn down on the back, and we build our living quarter there. And then it's for 16 and a half years.
In 1921, the Tucson Chinese Chamber of Commerce was founded. It's the only Chinese-based Chamber of Commerce beyond that in San Francisco in the American Southwest. So in 1921, again, this is the heyday of the Chinese in Tucson. Folks were able to pool resources through an official Chamber of Commerce that financed individuals who wanted to start in modest grocery stores. And that's very important given the fact that, again, the only Chamber of Commerce in the United States, at least this side of Mississippi, beyond San Francisco, was that in Tucson. Men came to Tucson, and they leased grocery stores from Mexicans who were no longer interested in running a grocery store. And they leased the grocery store and the apartments, the adjoining house, from Mexicans. And I write about this in an article that I just published in August. Okay, so these relations are very, very key. When you don't have any finances, when you don't have any kith relations here in which to draw, you rely on your neighbors. And that's what happened initially in 1900 with Chinese, the first ones here who were grocers, Mexican neighbors.
Grace, in my generation, my dad opened a store in 47. So what he did is he had his GI Bill, and my uncles, Uncle Howard and Uncle Jerry, were already living in Tucson with Uncle Tony, and they said, hey, my dad wanted to use his GI Bill to get a degree in engineering.
Yeah.
And so he comes to Tucson, actually, to go to U of A, and boom, like just typical young fathers, he had a wife and he has a son coming, So the famous word I always say to Robin, Chili Bill introduced our grocery stores. And everybody that had a grocery store knows Chili Bill. He was actually the salesman that sold all the spices to all the Chinese stores. So he knew what store was empty or who somebody wanted to sell. So when my dad was working for Uncle Howard,
Mexican spices or Chinese spices?
Mexican spices, like chili peanuts and all that stuff, and
Those
oregano.
Chinese spices are hot.
Yeah.
Hotter than the Mexican jalapeno.
But anyway, Chili Bill said, hey, Alan, there's a store for sale. And so same thing there. My dad borrowed money from Uncle Howard, maybe $500, and he sold his GI money, and that's how we got.
Yeah.
But I don't know how Mary's family, but that's, that was 1947 after World War II.
Right.
Well, my grandfather came in 1870. My grandfather came in 1870, so my son here is almost 6 generations in Tucson. But my mother managed because my uncle who owned a big, at that time was a big Chinese grocery store called the Eagle Market on South 6th Avenue. So he helped my mother quite a bit if we were in financial trouble. But my mother was very enterprising. She raised 6 children in that little Chinese store, just selling 5 cents worth of candy and, like you say, salabitos. A lot of salabitos, we ate a lot of salabitos.
Right, and the success of the markets, which again are not grocery stores, the success of the markets of the Chinese who own them really helped the small-scale grocery stores until the children working in those grocery stores went to college. And those stores, again, are slowly vanishing. But we still see some markets, again, in the 80s and the 90s and some super centers, okay? But again, it's a totally different animal in terms of a grocery store versus a market versus a super center.
I learned this from Esther, everything originated in China 10, Esther 10. And she said, actually, Chinese invented this credit union concept. The concept is the name Biaohui in Chinese. So maybe you can find 4 or 5 in the 8 relatives or friends. You don't have any money, but they are willing to help. And each one come up with $50. And that's a lot of money. And you give, maybe you say 5% interest. Okay, so when you start a business, you have profit. You return those money to them, one each month. And they would make money this way. And actually you are enabled to get credit get loan from the bank.
A little while back, you mentioned that there was about 1,000 to 2,000 illegal or undocumented back in the old days. And somewhere the statistics show that 70–80% of people from Hoiting and Tucson came over here, and they are paper sons. Can you expand on that paper sons? And how many of us that were born here are anchor babies?
And really, really illegal anchor babies, if you think about it. This is hard to get a hold on because what you have to do is you have to go through literally thousands of immigration records. And not only that, but you have to trace those immigration records back to family records. In my database, again, it's about 1,600 Chinese cases. I came up with maybe 20 paper son instances, okay, 20 out of 1,600 through Mexico and through this border corridor, okay? But that paper son phenomenon does not happen with regularity until after 1910. What you see before that, the Chinese community here are those people who actually did cross the border, sometimes legally, sometimes not, who were the people that they legitimately claimed to be. Now, this also brings up another sort of set of circumstances, and Dr. Chow can talk about this, I can talk about this ad nauseum, was the immigration bureaucracy that was set up to scrutinize individuals coming in and claiming to be one identity. And the reason why a lot of folks came through Mexico is because they could avoid the port of San Francisco and later on Angel Island because they were detained for more than like 2 or 3 months because the immigration bureaucracy was doing its investigation into paper son or fraudulent entry based on another identity. Mexico became a huge thoroughfare so that the Chinese could avoid this situation of being detained for 2 or 3 months and came through Mexico into the United States a little bit less encumbered, but yet, like I write about in my book, I talk about how the immigration bureaucracy is really built based on surveillance and scrutiny of the Chinese, not necessarily detention. Now, merchants came to the United States from Mexico as Mexican citizens, and they came legally. And the next article I'm going to write about is really how laborers came here illegally and were smuggled by Mexicans, but that happens after 1915. This is why, folks, we need your records, because you may not know what you have in terms of the documentation, how that may link up to other documentation. You may have the missing, I guess maybe the smoking gun into a history that's completed. Because as a historian, and Dr. Chow can say this, we're sort of like detectives, you know, that show, History Detective, which I never watch, but everyone asks me about. We're linking pieces of information together, and I may be missing a piece of that puzzle to actually illuminate that story as truth. Other than that, I'm speculating, and then that's bad history.